How far can a single night go before it destroys everything? I told myself it was harmless, that crossing the line on my birthday didn't mean betrayal, just a moment of truth. But when my husband found out, he didn't shout or beg. He just walked away and let the law finish what I'd started. I'm Alara Vance, 33, and I ruined my marriage on the one night I swore I deserved to feel special. It was my birthday, and I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, just celebrating, just letting go for once. I'd spent years being the careful wife, the mother who scheduled everything, the woman who smiled politely while my husband, Noah, talked about budgets and balance. So when my client Ryan leaned in too close that night, when laughter turned into something that lingered too long, I didn't pull away. I told myself it was harmless, a spark I'd earned. The next morning, the guilt came like a shadow I couldn't shake. I tried to laugh it off, to call it a misunderstanding. I even told my sister Tessa that it was just a moment, nothing worth confessing. She said, "You didn't cheat if you didn't mean it." I clung to that line like a shield. But Noah wasn't stupid. He saw the way I avoided his eyes, the way my phone never left my hand. He didn't accuse me, not at first. He just watched, quiet and steady, while I built my excuses. When the truth finally came out, I expected shouting, slammed doors, maybe tears. But Noah didn't do any of that. He just said one sentence that froze me. "You've already told the world what I meant to you." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Because the world had seen everything. Every smile, every drink, every camera flash that caught me crossing a line I can never uncross. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The week before my birthday, I was already restless. Noah had asked what I wanted to do, and I told him I wanted something unforgettable. He smiled the way he always did, quiet and patient, and said he'd planned a dinner at my favorite restaurant. I tried to look grateful, but inside I felt disappointed. Dinner felt too small, too routine. I wanted attention, noise, people who'd look at me like I mattered. At breakfast a few days later, I mentioned that Ryan, the client whose event I was planning, had offered to help me organize something bigger. I said it casually, stirring my coffee, as if it meant nothing. Noah looked up from his tablet and said, "He's your client, not your friend." I laughed and told him he sounded jealous. He said he wasn't, but his tone was clipped. That annoyed me. I told him I was tired of feeling like I lived inside a spreadsheet. He said, "At least spreadsheets don't lie." I didn't answer. That night, I told Tessa about it over the phone. She said Noah needed to loosen up and let me enjoy myself. I said I agreed. She said she'd help me make the party fun. You only turn 33 once. I laughed and told her I wanted to feel alive again. She said, "Then act like it." At work the next day, Ryan stopped by my desk. He was charming as always, dressed too well for someone in marketing. He asked if Noah was coming to the birthday event. I said maybe, though I hadn't even told Noah I wanted to go out. Ryan smiled and said, "He doesn't sound like the party type." I said, "He's stable, not boring." Ryan chuckled. "Same thing sometimes." I should have walked away, but I didn't. By Thursday, the event had taken shape. Nothing official, just a rooftop lounge after dinner. Tessa sent out invites to a few friends, and somehow Ryan got added too. I told myself it was harmless, professional even. Noah seemed distracted that week anyway, working late, checking something on his laptop every night. I noticed a folder labeled Household on his desktop once when I passed by. When I asked about it, he said, "Just organizing." I rolled my eyes and said, "You're always organizing." He didn't argue. The morning of my birthday, Noah handed me a small box with a silver bracelet inside. It was elegant, simple, too simple. He said he'd chosen it because it reminded him of when we first met. I smiled but said nothing. I didn't want to hurt him, but the gift made me feel old, predictable. I told him not to wait up after dinner because I'd probably meet some friends later. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Just don't turn it into a show," he said. I laughed, pretending not to hear the edge in his voice. Dinner went fine. The food was good, the candlelight soft, and Noah even tried to be playful. But all I could think about was the rooftop party waiting afterward, the music, the lights, the way people would look at me. When he offered to call it a night early, I agreed too quickly. He seemed surprised but didn't press. As we left the restaurant, I saw him glance at my phone when a message from Tessa flashed. "Everyone's already up here. Hurry." When we got home, I changed into a red dress I'd bought weeks earlier but never worn. Noah watched from the doorway, his face unreadable. I told him he didn't have to come, that it would just be people from work. He said, "And Ryan?" I said, "He's part of work." He just nodded. Then, almost gently, he said, "Don't let them make a fool of you." I replied, "I can handle myself." He said, "I'm not worried about them." Those words stayed in my head the whole drive there. The rooftop was crowded, bright, alive. Tessa was already dancing, shouting that I looked incredible. Ryan waved from the bar, holding 2 glasses of champagne. I told myself to keep things light, professional, fun, but the music was loud, and the drinks kept coming. Ryan leaned close to talk, his hand brushing my arm when he spoke. I didn't pull away. I wanted to feel wanted again, and I let myself believe that wasn't wrong. People were filming, taking photos, posting stories. I saw flashes of light everywhere and didn't care. At some point, Tessa started chanting for a toast. Everyone gathered around. Ryan raised his glass and said, "To Alara, who deserves to be celebrated properly." I laughed and clinked glasses with him. Someone shouted, "Give her a birthday kiss." I rolled my eyes, but Ryan leaned in, grinning, and pressed his lips to my cheek. It was supposed to be a joke, but I didn't move away quickly enough. The cheers got louder. I looked over his shoulder and saw Noah. He was standing near the exit, holding my jacket. His face wasn't angry. It was calm, too calm. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds before he turned and walked away. My stomach dropped, but I kept smiling because everyone was watching. Later, when the crowd thinned and the music faded, I checked my phone. There it was, a video of the toast, already posted by Tessa, already tagged. My name, Ryan's, the kiss, the caption, "Best birthday ever." I wanted to delete it, but it was too late. People were commenting, liking, sharing. I called Noah twice that night. He didn't answer. When I got home, the house was dark except for a single light in his office. The door was closed. I hesitated outside it, then whispered through the wood, "Can we talk?" He didn't respond. I stood there for a full minute before turning away. As I climbed the stairs, I heard a soft click behind me, the sound of his door locking. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. Tessa had tagged me again. Still can't believe that kiss. When I woke up, the house was silent. Noah had already gone to work, but the bed looked untouched on his side. I checked my phone immediately. More notifications, more comments on the video. Someone had written, "Her husband must be a saint." I laughed out loud, then stopped. It didn't sound like a joke anymore. I told myself it was just a misunderstanding, that Noah wouldn't care once I explained. I made coffee and rehearsed what I'd say. It was harmless. Just a bit of fun. Everyone was drinking. I practiced smiling while saying it, like it was all a story with no weight. At noon, Tessa called. She said the video had over 5,000 views. I told her that wasn't funny. She said, "Relax. Everyone knows you're married. It's just a birthday thing." I asked if she could take it down. She sighed and said, "Alara, you're overreacting. Don't let him guilt you for enjoying yourself." I said she didn't understand how serious Noah could get. She said, "Then maybe he needs a reminder. He's not your boss." Her confidence soothed me, and I started to believe her. Maybe Noah was just sulking, not angry. Maybe all I had to do was act normal until he came around. When he got home that evening, he walked straight to the living room, set down his bag, and sat in silence. I joined him, careful, smiling like nothing was wrong. He finally said, "I saw the video." My throat tightened. I said, "You mean the toast? That was nothing." He said, "It wasn't nothing." I laughed, too loud, and said, "You're being dramatic." He looked at me then, steady and unreadable. "You let another man touch you while people cheered," he said quietly. I tried to make it sound ridiculous. "He barely touched me. It wasn't even a kiss, more like a joke." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, stood, and said, "It's good you think of marriage as a joke. Makes everything simpler." Then he went upstairs. I followed him, saying he was twisting it, that I couldn't control what people filmed. He didn't look back. In the hallway, he said, "You controlled every second of it." Then his door closed. That night, I called Tessa again. She told me to give him space, that he'd forgive me once he cooled down. I wanted to believe that, but something about Noah's silence felt final. The next morning, when I came downstairs, his coffee mug was gone from its usual spot. The kitchen looked bare, too neat. On the counter was his planner, open to a page with one line written in pen, "Downtown 10:15. I didn't know what it meant. At work, I tried to distract myself. Ryan stopped by my desk, smiling like nothing had happened. "Rough night?" he asked. I forced a laugh. "You could say that." He said, "Don't worry, it'll blow over." I said, "Noah doesn't just let things blow over." Ryan shrugged. "Then maybe he'll learn to." I didn't like his tone, but I didn't correct him. By lunchtime, co-workers had stopped whispering when I walked by. I told myself that meant it wasn't a big deal anymore. But when I went to check my phone, I saw a message from an unknown number. It's everywhere now. My stomach twisted. When I opened the link, I saw the video again. But this time, someone had slowed it down. It looked worse now, like I'd leaned into Ryan's touch instead of away. The comments were harsher. People were tagging Noah. I deleted the message, shut off my phone, and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. That night, I tried to talk again. I told Noah that the video had spread too far, that people were twisting it. He said, "They're not twisting it, they're watching it." I said, "I didn't do anything wrong." He said, "Then you shouldn't be this afraid." I told him he was overreacting, that every couple has issues. He didn't answer. He just opened his laptop and began typing. I stood behind him, trying to see what he was doing, but the screen was angled away. I noticed a spreadsheet open, rows labeled with dates, my birthday, my work events, and others I didn't recognize. When I asked what it was, he said, "I'm keeping track." I asked, "Of what?" He said, "Of what's left to lose." I didn't understand what that meant. Later that evening, I went to bed alone. I stared at the ceiling, angry at him for making me feel like a criminal. In my head, I built a story where he was the one destroying us, not me. He's cold, I told myself. He's punishing me for being alive. That thought made me feel strong again. The next day, Tessa came over. She said I looked pale and needed to get ahead of the story. I asked what that meant. She said, "If you pretend it's no big deal, people will believe you." So she helped me post a photo. Me on the balcony, smiling with the caption, "People love to talk." I just lived my life. It got likes. I felt better for an hour. Then I noticed Noah had seen it and said nothing. That night, when I came downstairs for water, I found him on the couch. He was holding a stack of printed pages. I asked what they were. He said, "Records." I tried to sound casual. "For what?" He said, "For clarity." I reached for one, but he gathered them neatly and said, "Not yet." Then he went upstairs, leaving the papers on the table for a moment before returning to collect them. I felt something tighten in my chest. I didn't know what he was planning, but for the first time, I sensed it wasn't just about anger, it was preparation. As I turned off the lights, the sound of the printer started again from his office, slow, steady, and final. A faint ding echoed from my phone. A new calendar invite had appeared. Meeting. Downtown 10:15. The calendar alert sat on my phone screen all morning like a bruise I couldn't ignore. Downtown 10:15. It looked harmless, but I couldn't shake the unease it caused. I tried to tell myself it was work-related, some meeting Noah hadn't mentioned, but he was never careless with details, never vague. He did everything with quiet precision. That Saturday was supposed to be our family brunch. My mother had been calling all week, asking if things were okay. I told her we were fine, just tired. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. She said, "Don't let pride turn into loneliness." I said she was being dramatic. Noah was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. He looked composed, dressed in a dark shirt, reading something on his tablet. I poured myself coffee and said, "Are we still going to brunch?" He said, "I already told your mom we can't make it." I blinked. "You did what?" He said, "I don't think public appearances help us right now." I tried to laugh, saying, "You make it sound like a scandal." He didn't look up. "Isn't it?" he asked quietly. I wanted to shout that he was being cruel, that he was the one embarrassing us by acting cold. Instead, I said, "If you keep making it a big deal, people will think it is." He said, "You already made sure they do." I stormed upstairs and called Tessa. I told her Noah was still angry and controlling, refusing to move on. She said, "He's just trying to guilt you because he knows he lost the argument." I said, "What argument?" She said, "That you deserve better." Her words made me feel justified again. I wanted to prove that I could still control the story. So that afternoon, I decided to go out anyway. I posted a photo from the cafe near the park, me smiling, captioned, "Some days, peace is the best revenge." Within minutes, Ryan commented, "You look amazing, birthday girl." When I saw Noah later that day, he was sitting at his desk, calm as ever. I told him I went for coffee with friends. He said, "You mean with Ryan?" I froze. He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was my post. I stammered that it didn't mean anything. He said, "Nothing always means something with you." I told him he was twisting things again, but my voice cracked halfway through. He looked at me for a long time before saying, "Do you even remember who you were before you needed an audience?" That line hurt more than I wanted to admit. The silence that followed stretched until it felt like another wall between us. I left the room before I said something worse. That night, we were invited to Tessa's apartment for a small get-together. I didn't want to go, but she insisted. "If you don't show up, everyone will think you're hiding." So I went, wearing the same red dress. Noah drove us in silence. When we arrived, Tessa hugged me too tightly, whispering, "Don't give him the power tonight." Inside, people smiled awkwardly. The air felt too thick, the laughter too sharp. Ryan was there again. Of course he was, and the sight of him made my stomach twist. He grinned and said, "Didn't expect to see you here." I said, "I didn't expect to either." Noah stayed near the wall, polite but distant. Halfway through the evening, someone suggested a toast to forgiveness and fun. I laughed, trying to make it sound easy. Tessa raised her glass toward Noah and said, "Come on, lighten up. She didn't kill anyone." The room chuckled, but Noah didn't. He said softly, "Not yet." The table went quiet. I glared at him, humiliated, then turned it into a joke. "See? He's got a sense of humor after all." Laughter resumed, but forced. I downed my drink too quickly. Ryan leaned closer later, whispering that I looked amazing even under pressure. I said, "You shouldn't say that." He said, "You don't want me to stop." And the truth was, I didn't. Someone started filming again, pretending it was just for fun. Ryan wrapped an arm around my shoulders for the photo. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. But when I glanced toward the hallway, I saw Noah watching, expression unreadable, jaw tight. He didn't say a word, just turned and left. Tessa followed him outside, probably to calm him down. A few minutes later, she returned, pale. "He said he's done," she whispered. "He said he's handling things properly." I laughed, pretending it didn't sting. "He always says things like that. It's just his way of sounding superior." But I couldn't shake the chill that settled over me. When we got home, the living room lights were off. Noah's briefcase was gone. On the counter sat an envelope with my name on it, unsealed. Inside was a list, dates, times, locations. At the bottom, downtown 10:15, confirmed. I felt dizzy reading it. I didn't know what he was confirming or why it felt like a threat. Tessa called again before bed, asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine, that Noah was just trying to scare me. She said, "Then scare him back." I asked how. She said, "Show him you're not afraid. Post something happy tomorrow. Make him see you're still winning." But when I hung up, the apartment felt hollow, too still. I stared at the empty side of the bed, the faint impression where he used to sleep. For the first time, I wondered if I'd already lost something I couldn't post away. As I closed my eyes, my phone buzzed once. I picked it up and saw a message from Noah. "I've arranged everything. You'll see soon enough." Outside, through the thin curtains, I saw headlights sweep across the window, and then the sound of a car door shutting, followed by slow, measured footsteps fading down the street. The next morning felt heavier than usual. The air in the house seemed thick, like the silence itself was watching me. Noah didn't come home that night, and his absence made every sound sharper, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the faint echo of footsteps that weren't there. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I even called his office, and they said he'd taken the day off. My stomach turned at that. Noah never missed work. I told myself it was fine, that he needed space. Still, by noon, I couldn't stop pacing. Then, unexpectedly, Margaret called. She rarely reached out unless it was serious. Her voice was calm, but her words weren't. "Ilara," she said, "I think you and Noah need to come by tonight. It's time we all talked." I froze. "Talk about what?" She said, "You know what." I wanted to hang up, but she added softly, "Owen asked me why his father isn't home. He said he heard you crying." I didn't realize I'd been loud enough for him to hear. I promised Margaret we'd come, though I wasn't sure if Noah would. Around 5, Tessa stopped by uninvited, as usual. She brought wine, trying to sound cheerful. I told her about the dinner at Margaret's and said I didn't want to go. She said, "You can't let her control the story. She'll twist it to make you the villain." I said, "What if I already am?" She rolled her eyes. "You made one mistake. Stop acting like you're in a tragedy." But I couldn't shake the feeling that things were already in motion, like I was standing still while the ground shifted beneath me. At 7, Noah came home. He looked composed, almost too calm. I said, "Margaret wants us there." He said, "I know. She called me too." I studied his face for any emotion, anger, sadness, anything, but found nothing. I said, "Are we really doing this?" He said, "We're finishing it." The drive there was quiet. I stared out the window, watching the lights blur, pretending the cold air didn't sting my eyes. When we arrived, Margaret greeted us stiffly. Owen ran to Noah first, hugging his leg. He didn't reach for me. That small gesture hurt more than I expected. Dinner was uncomfortable from the first minute. Margaret tried to keep the conversation polite, but it broke quickly. She said, "Ilara, I think we all deserve some honesty." I said, "About what?" She said, "About the video, about the things being said." Noah stayed silent, letting her speak. I told her it wasn't what it looked like. She said, "Everything always looks worse when you try to defend it." I said she didn't understand our marriage. She said, "No, I just see what's left of it." Tessa jumped in, accusing Margaret of judging me unfairly. Margaret looked at her coolly. "A woman who calls betrayal freedom doesn't need my advice." Tessa slammed her glass down, muttering that older generations loved drama. I wanted to disappear. Then Owen, from the end of the table, asked quietly, "Daddy, are you and Mummy still married?" The room fell silent. I froze, unable to look at him. Noah didn't answer right away. Then he said, softly but clearly, "For now." That broke something inside me. I stood up, saying this was ridiculous, that we didn't need an audience for our private matters. Margaret said, "You made it public first." I shouted back, "It was just a kiss." She said, "It was a decision." Noah placed his napkin down neatly and said, "We should go." As we walked out, Owen tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Why are you and Daddy sad?" I couldn't answer. The car ride home was worse than silence. It was absence. He drove without looking at me once. When we got back, he headed straight to his office. I followed him, voice trembling. "You can't just keep shutting me out," he said. "You shut us out first." I said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." He replied, "But you did." I tried to cry, hoping it would soften him. He just said, "Crying won't change what you broadcast." Then he did something that chilled me. He reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small folder. It was labeled Household. Inside, I caught glimpses, printed screenshots, receipts, copies of posts. I stepped back, whispering, "You've been collecting things." He said, "I needed clarity." I tried to sound calm. "What is this, some kind of punishment?" He said, "No, it's protection." His voice was steady, final. He turned off the lamp and walked past me toward the stairs. I followed him, desperate, saying, "You can't just walk away from a marriage like this." He stopped at the top step and said, "You already did. I'm just following through." I stood frozen as he disappeared down the hallway. The weight of his calm scared me more than any shouting could. Later that night, Tessa texted, "How did dinner go?" I didn't reply. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folder I'd taken from his office. I hadn't opened it yet. The label stared back at me, Household. I wondered what was inside. I finally opened it. Each page was neat and organized, printouts of my messages, tagged photos, timestamps. At the bottom of the stack was a single sticky note, "Downtown, 10:15. My hands trembled. That's when I heard the faint sound of a drawer closing from down the hall, followed by Noah's voice, calm and distant. "I'll handle it properly." He said it softly, like a final statement, not a threat. I sat there, the folder open on my lap, the sound of the house around me empty and too quiet. I didn't know what properly meant, but I knew it wasn't forgiveness. As I set the folder down, my phone screen lit up in the dark, a calendar reminder flashing again. Downtown, 10:15. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note, Downtown, 10:15. It didn't feel like a meeting anymore. It felt like a countdown. The air in the bedroom was thick, and the silence between us was worse than any argument we'd ever had. I lay there listening to Noah's slow, steady breathing from the guest room down the hall. He'd stopped sleeping beside me a week ago, and I told myself it was temporary, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. By sunrise, I had convinced myself I needed to take control. I made coffee, put on a calm face, and waited at the table like nothing was wrong. When Noah walked in, he looked composed as always, already dressed, tie perfectly straight. He nodded politely, as if I were a stranger sharing his kitchen. I tried to sound light. "You're up early," he said. "I have things to organize." I asked what kind of things. He said, "Personal." I laughed, trying to ease the tension. "You mean serious?" He didn't smile. "I mean final." That word made my stomach twist. I asked if he was leaving again. He said, "No, I'm just making sure what's next is clear." I asked what that meant, but he didn't answer. He finished his coffee, washed the mug, and left the kitchen. His calmness was unbearable. I would have preferred shouting, anything human. By mid-morning, I called Tessa. I told her he was acting robotic, cold, almost rehearsed. She said, "He's bluffing. Men like him love to pretend they're in control." I said he wasn't pretending. She told me to post something again, something confident. "You need to remind everyone you're still fine," she said. I hesitated, but I did it anyway. I posted a smiling photo with the caption, "Storms pass, but I don't break." It got likes, but one comment stood out. From someone I didn't know, "Strong women don't destroy their homes to prove it." I deleted it immediately. Still, the words lingered like smoke. When I went into the living room, I noticed his briefcase on the table. It was open, organized to perfection. Files, pens, even small envelopes labeled in neat handwriting. One was marked Owen, another accounts, another property. My heart sank. It wasn't just about anger anymore. He was preparing for separation. I waited until he came home that evening, pacing near the doorway. When he walked in, I said, "We need to talk." He said, "We already have." I said, "No, you keep walking away while I try to fix things." He looked at me, steady and tired. "You don't want to fix things. You want to erase them." That stung more than I expected. I asked if he could forgive me, just once. He said, "Forgiveness isn't supposed to feel like permission." I tried to cry again, thinking maybe it would reach him. It didn't. He just said, "I'll handle this properly." I asked what that meant. He said, "It means you'll understand soon enough." I followed him to his office, demanding clarity. He opened a drawer, pulled out a notebook, and placed it on the desk. I recognized his handwriting, dates, notes, short lines like "consulted Wednesday," and documents gathered. I said, "You're really documenting this?" He said, "You documented it first. You just called it social media." I felt sick. He turned on his laptop, ignoring me. I shouted that he was ruining our family. He said, "No, I'm protecting it." That night, I couldn't sit still. I walked from room to room, touching furniture, pictures, anything that made the house still feel like ours. I ended up in Owen's room, watching him sleep, his small hand gripping the blanket. I whispered, "Mummy's fixing it." But even saying that felt like a lie. The next morning, Margaret came by unexpectedly. She stood in the doorway, polite but firm. "He told me you might need help packing," she said. I froze. "Packing?" She nodded. "It's better to be prepared." I tried to laugh, but my voice cracked. "You really think he'd do that?" She said, "He already has." I told her she was wrong, that Noah wasn't cruel. She said, "No, he's careful. There's a difference." Then she left, leaving the door half open, as if to remind me it wouldn't be mine for long. That evening, I waited again, determined to confront him one last time. When he came in, I stood in the hallway, blocking his path. "If you're ending this, at least say it to my face." He looked at me, expression unreadable. "I'm not ending it out of anger. I'm ending it because I finally understand you." I said he was twisting everything. He said, "You twisted first." He picked up a small folder from the counter, the same one labeled household. I grabbed his wrist, desperate. "We can fix this, Noah." He said, "You don't fix something by pretending it never broke." Then he stepped past me and reached for his jacket. I asked where he was going. He said, "Downtown, 10:15. I stood there, stunned, as the front door closed quietly behind him. I called Tessa again, panicked. "He's serious this time, he's doing something." She said, "Then get ahead of him. Show up first." I said, "Where?" She said, "Wherever he's going. Don't let him control the story." I didn't know if that was good advice or not, but I couldn't stay still. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and stood by the window. The night outside was dark and cold, the city lights flickering faintly in the distance. When Noah returned a few hours later, he didn't look at me. He just said, "Be ready tomorrow. You'll understand everything then." He walked upstairs without another word. The sound of his door closing was soft, final, I sat on the couch until dawn, staring at the faint glow of the digital clock. I told myself it was just another fight, another test. But deep down, I knew the test was already over, and I'd failed. As the first light crept through the curtains, my phone vibrated on the table, an email notification flashing from Noah. Formal notice, see attached. I arrived downtown just before 10, my hands shaking as I parked. I told myself this was just another of his warnings, that he wouldn't really go through with anything. But when I saw him across the plaza, standing near the courthouse steps, I knew it was real. He looked calm, dressed neatly, holding an envelope. I walked toward him, smiling weakly. "We don't have to do this," I said. He looked at me with the same quiet expression he'd worn for weeks, and handed me the envelope. Inside were papers, petition for dissolution of marriage. My vision blurred. "You're ending us," I whispered. He said, "You ended us the night you made it public." People walked past, barely noticing as I stood frozen. He turned, stepped away, and said over his shoulder, "I'll always care, but I can't keep living in your performance." Then he disappeared into the building, leaving me standing there, clutching the papers I'd never imagined holding. The city noise drowned everything else out, car horns, footsteps, the faint click of a phone camera nearby. I looked down at the page again, seeing my own name above his, and finally understood that regret had arrived too late. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.